Up next is Anthony Perasso. He's a senior from Los Angeles, California in the Lynch School of Education, majoring in applied psychology and human development as well as English. He's on the men's rowing team and the editor-in-chief of the New England Classic. He will be moving on to a career in video production and internet media, but still has no idea what he wants to be when he grows up. So without further ado, Anthony Perasso.
All right. Hello, everybody. Like John said, I'm Anthony. Thanks for coming. I know it's like a busy time in the year and everything like that. I have a paper due tomorrow, but it'll be fine. So this is preschoolis.cool. It's not like a typo. I didn't forget to proofread the presentation. This is actually part of a larger final project or independent study that I'm doing, where I'm studying preschool's intangible benefits, like beyond the current literature that's kind of already out there. And I'm going to make a website with like videos and text and just kind of like, not so much dumbing it down, but just making it easy, like all this literature and stuff easier to understand, and like so that like a mom can look at it or like a lawmaker can look at it. And it's not just like this black and white, like empirical literature that like 3 to 5 year olds performed better when under X, Y, and Z circumstances or something like that. And it all sort of came about last semester when I was picking classes. I was looking at the upper level Lynch classes, and I was like, I don't want to take any of these classes. So I went to my advisor and I started to complain, and I was like, what do I do? Like, should I change this major to a minor? Like, none of these look appealing to me. And she was like, just do an independent study on one thing that stuck out to you. And that was, for me, that was preschool, so I wanted to keep doing it. And it was that easy. I'm getting 3 credits just to kind of do my own research and meet with her once a week, and I'm loving it. So this is not final by any means, but this is where I'm at so far. So I'll start with me in preschool, a little story. Here I am, I'm like 4 years old, I think, and the yellow door represent the yellow door at St. George's Preschool in La Cañada, California, which is where I'm from. And so I'm just like, happy kid, 4 years old, want to play, want to do stuff, but it's a sad story in preschool. I'm not. It was a recess break, and I was alone crying in a big truck tire that was put on its side in a sand pit that you could like play in, and it was my little like rubbery cave. It was shelter from the rest of the world, the antagonists, the 4-year-olds out there that were trying to ruin my day. I don't know if someone made fun of me for swinging simultaneously with a girl. And you know the rules, you have to get married if you swing next to a girl. Or if someone didn't, my favorite activity was playing with shaving cream at break. Maybe someone didn't want to do that with me. I don't know what it was, but like developing English major that I was, I came up with a couple rhymes and I said them. It was, nobody likes me, everyone hates me, I'll just go eat worms. And that is how I felt at that preschool recess. And to this day, it's one of my most vivid childhood memories. But so there I was complaining, not knowing how lucky I was, like at the time, to have parents sending me to this preschool, to have like 2 wonderful teachers that like cared about me, would like check in on my development and everything. I actually went for 3 years because I got held back for social emotional development. Here I am now. So I didn't know how lucky I was at the time. But now, I'm 22 years old, and if I'm going through something, I'm not going to go hide in a tire, right? I'm going to take myself out to a steak dinner, because I deserve that. But when you go out for a steak dinner, you don't want the steak overdone, you don't want the steak underdone, you don't want it overseasoned, because that ruins the integrity of the meat. You don't want it underseasoned, like you're cooking in some kitchen on Foster Street and these juniors don't know what they're doing. You want the perfect steak. That's why, this is a USDA prime choice piece of meat. And you can mess it up, right? The same is true for preschool, in a way. You have this raw piece of meat. You get to cook it once. You ruin it, you ruin a nice steak. Now, human development, you have this child that's born, and there's these critical windows of development, if you will, where you're 3 years old, something you learn when you're 3, you're not going to learn again when you're 8. Like, the easiest way to describe it is think of a little kid that can learn Spanish, German, whatever, when they're 5, like super easily, and you try to teach it to freshmen at Boston College in independent Spanish, and or not independent, intermediate Spanish, and they forget it in like 2 or 3 years. So there's these critical windows, right? And, oh yeah, so it's fine, we're not going to do that one. So anyways, yeah, so there's these critical windows of development, and everyone, there's this research out there, basically, that says there's 2 really strong arguments for preschool and why it should be universalized. And the first one is its lasting cognitive benefits, and then its lasting economic benefits. And yeah, so let's get to those. You can't. Yeah. So the first thing is in the economic benefit thing. There's this study that they did. It's called the Perry Preschool Project. It was in 1962, and they took like about 400 kids, like 200 they randomly assigned to go to this high quality preschool, and then 200 they just didn't go to preschool at all. They're from the same like low income neighborhood in Chicago. And because this was done in 1962, it's a longitudinal study, they've been able to follow these kids. And so one of the most shocking like findings that they saw down the line was the economic benefits of sending these kids to preschool was that they invested per kid like $15,000, but what they got back was like a 10 to 16% rate of return, just because the people who went to preschool went on to achieve more academically. They were less likely to end up on welfare. They were much less likely to go to prison, which was the biggest chunk, as you can see, because it costs a lot of money to put people in prison. And that's one of the biggest problems in our country is that people, instead of being in school, they drop out of high school and then they somehow end up in prison. And that's the opposite of what you want to do when you're a teenager. And then there's also less instances of like remedial education getting held back. So as you can see, educational savings. So preschool makes economic sense, and it's been repeated by other studies, but we're just going to frame it in the Perry Preschool one because it's easy to talk about. It's very laid out. And then the second like big package of benefits that preschool was shown to give in the Perry Preschool Project was cognitive benefits, and so that's just like mentally, like developmentally cognitive. Like they're more likely to graduate high school, they're more likely to go to college, and when you're more likely to go to college, you're more likely to get a higher paying job. And but it starts like much sooner than just like graduating high school and graduating college. There's one of the like a big problem with people when they show up to like kindergarten or first grade is that students from low income backgrounds will often be like already far behind reading level or math skills or whatever. And if you start behind, you're going to stay behind. Like it's very hard to catch up. So preschool in this way can help get you up to speed and provide for like what you weren't getting at home. And some other things that were notable in the Perry study that we'll get to later, and like these intangible benefits, were there's less instances of teen pregnancy, less drugs and like smoking, marijuana, cigarette use, less family counseling, and less disease in the group that went to preschool. So, but there's this, as with many things, there's a gap between like the scientific findings and the policy of what's going on right now. So the 12,000 to 2,000, like you'll see anywhere between like that much money invested in students, depending on like the state that they live in. So if you're from New Jersey, they have like a pretty sick program going on where like they have about $12,000 to give per kid in preschool. But then, which is good because then you can provide this like high quality preschool that makes it worth it. Versus like the $2,000 is in a state like Mississippi where they just actually decreased funding. And Mississippi is like one of already the lowest achieving and poorest states in the country. So that's not what you want to see, right? If there's already like all this research saying like, hey, like economically makes sense, cognitively makes sense, then like, why aren't we doing it? You know what I mean? But like you can't expect Washington senator guys to be like on the ball, like on top of the science all the time. Like, I don't know if you've seen this before, but this guy comes in, he's like, hey, like global warming's not a problem. Like, it's snowing earlier than usual this year. He throws it on the ground. He's like, take that, Mr. President. Like, it's not real. So, I'm not gonna trust that. But then year after year, it's like, hey, it's getting hotter all the time. So that was like saying, someone pointed out to me before this, that like, just because people are getting into Stanford or just because people are getting into Boston College, like, yeah, we don't need preschool. Like, it's an anomaly, it's whatever. Some people are doing fine. But there's more than that. There's a whole argument for like why preschool shouldn't be universalized, and I think it can be, like some people call it like glorified, it's like daycare with a higher price tag, or like, I don't remember preschool, so like, why should we invest money in it? Like, shouldn't we be investing more of the money in high schools? But like, as I was saying earlier, there's these like critical windows that you don't want to miss. And so that's important. And back to there, you got to tell those people to chill out. Preschool is important. But then, so that's kind of like the where we're at right now thing. More common research, and then like what I'm getting into, like going beyond or whatever, is basically like all of human development is in this, like the people at Harvard call it a serve and return. I like a give and take, but it's what you need to like enrich yourself like as you're developing, and it's like what they would give you in what like a preschool classroom would give you, and it's like pretty easily conceptualized with this little experiment here. It's a still face experiment where you have a baby and you have a mom. So if they're like interacting back and forth, like as people do, like as a loving mother or father would, the baby's like into it, pointing, smiling, happy. The mom's doing the exact same thing. Give and take stimulates the brain. But then like all of a sudden she turns her head, she goes blank, the baby loses it, starts crying, everything like that. Not good, right? And then she goes back to normal, give and take all over again, the baby's happy. But the problem is a lot of children don't get this phase. Their whole life is kind of like this. And preschool can be like a context where they get this no matter what's going on at home, if that makes sense. So another thing to learn in preschool is development of these executive functions, and it's kind of like the baseline of all these like academic and social skills that we're talking about. And there's this one study that points out that like playing a game or like having to pretend like I'm a dinosaur, you're a princess, and like having to remember that and like have that in your working memory is just as important for your brain's development as like running around and playing would be for your physical development. And that's just like, that's another thing that like preschool can give you, is this like learning how to play in groups. And so if you think about that, if you learn how to play in groups, you work on these executive functions, they teach you better behavior. You know how to control yourself. A teacher's more likely to like you. Like if you can follow the rules in games, if you can just like fit in with the preschoolers and not like cause a scene, you're gonna make more friends. If you make more friends, you're gonna wanna be at school. If you wanna be at school, you're gonna get better grades. If you get better grades, you're gonna wanna keep being at school. And this will go on and on until like high school or whatever, but it's laying the groundwork in preschool. That's like the thing that I'm looking into. And then if you don't make friends, because you don't like get these executive function deals, then you're not going to want to be at school. Like you're going to get worse grades. You're going to be less motivated. You're going to be less into it. And it all starts like at this early age where you either kind of like buy into it or you check out, because it's not academic reasons that are the biggest reasons people drop out of school and like end up in prison, or drop out of school and end up just like not learning anymore. It's that like, it's mostly emotional reasons that people dip out of school. And some stuff that like I'm just getting into now that I think is interesting and I want to know more about is that in the Perry preschool project, like the people who went to preschool had a much higher rate of like volunteering than the people who didn't. So maybe there's something like when they were younger, they learned like how other people thought and like the importance of acknowledging that like other people than you exist and like you should help them. So like some sort of like development of empathy in preschool. Relationship modeling is basically like the give and take thing I was talking about, where like if maybe your mom and dad both have to work, maybe you only have one parent and they work or something like that, and you're not giving this give and take at home, or like you're not having a healthy relationship model for you with a older like attachment figure, then a teacher can be like that, friends can be like that, and then down the line, like learning like how these models work, that'll apply to your friendships later in life, that'll apply to your like relationships later in life. And then there was like less instance of divorce and like family counseling, like I said, in the group that went to preschool. So maybe possibly researching it could be a thing. Another thing preschool can teach is conscientiousness, and that goes back to the executive functions, where it's like, hey, I know how to sit down and do this task and not get distracted. And being able to do that when you're 4, like one study was like, oh, you're 49% more likely to graduate from college by the time you're 25 if you know how to just like sit down, chill, and do something when you're 4. And there's another thing that equates conscientiousness as just as important a predictor of your SAT score as your IQ, because so that's cool. So it's not like all IQ all the time. And preschool is also like a really good outlet for positive stress, which is the kind of stress that, like, to go back to the story that I opened with, just like a kid like sad being alone, like you need a little bit of that in your life. You're in like a safe and stable environment, and that teaches you how to be resilient. And when you're resilient, again, like you're more popular with your peers. That's good. It keeps you coming back to school. But then there's also this other kind of stress. It's called toxic stress, and that's what you would get if your life is the constant still face experiment, where whatever's going on at home is negative, and you're under this like constant state of stress. And there's like the stress you're experiencing in your life has like a physical manifestation in your genes, and then like you're more likely to get disease. There's more instances of depression, and a lot of negative side effects just based on like these early experiences, like stay in your DNA forever. So closing thoughts here is that preschool should be looked more of as like a moral responsibility, not this luxury that like public dollars go to. Like when there's a little left over, it's like, oh, give the kids some money this year. But there can be a lot more money saved. Going back to the economic argument, if you want to, like down the line, if you invest the money early, then there's going to be less problems later. But I think if the argument was more shifted towards looking at people and like how to best develop them and like give everyone this like fair and equal opportunity to be the best person they can be, in a country that's getting like a lot more separated between rich and poor, then it's best to start early, and I think it would be a good payoff. And right now, only 41% of kids go to state-sponsored preschool, and even less go to like the high-quality ones, which is what you want, which is sad. And then like the more like down the line you get there, the more it's like separated between income and race as far as the layout at the 41% of the schools go. So moral responsibility. And that's it. I stumbled through that for sure, but we're here. Thank you.